prosecuted those officers. It wasn't like he did some super crime, right? You think about all of these issues are something that's relatively minor. There was an air freshener in the back of Daunte Wright's car. They pull him over for that minor thing, and then they start to run him for prior to see if they've got something else on him to get a bigger crime going. The stop over a paper license tag in the back of the lieutenant's truck. He just bought the car. Is the issue here, because I know you're doing something about that in Baltimore City, that there are too many stops over nothing, over minor stuff, and police are getting too involved in that?
So you're absolutely right, Joy. I think that we in this country have to start to reimagine what policing and public safety looks like, because for Black people in this country, these low-level offenses, this needless interaction with law enforcement can lead to a death sentence for Black people. And as you've already indicated, it's making eye contact in a high-crime neighborhood and ending up dead, right? Sandra Bland failed to put on a turn signal. George Floyd is alleged to have passed a $20 bill during a global pandemic for groceries. And so, yes, we, as an expectation, we've relied on the police to respond to every social ill of society, whether that's mental health, whether that's substance use disorder. It's time to reevaluate that. But more importantly, Joy, it's the culture of violent policing that has existed for Black people in this country that will continue to exist until there's a recognition that there's a problem. It's not until we had iPhones and social media and body-worn cameras that America would believe that a police officer would have the gall to put his knee on someone's neck, handcuffed for 9 minutes and 30 seconds. America has not been willing and wanted to believe that a Black uniformed lieutenant in the United States Army can be subjected to the overly dominant policing and brutality that is inflicted on Black people every single day in this country.
Yeah, and Charles Booker, the gall of, trying to get this lieutenant to, just let it go, because, they're so afraid of Black Lives Matter, these police. Blaming Black Lives Matter for the fact that police are brutal and cruel and saying you're going to ride the lightning, and that's because they're so afraid of Black Lives Matter. Your thoughts, because you were quite involved in the Breonna Taylor Black Lives Matter movement. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Joy, first of all, thank you for having me. And your point is absolutely right. I think this highlights a reality that if you look like me, you're going to be seen as a deadly weapon before being seen as a human being. And we are traumatized, we are terrorized, and then we're told to just let it go. And when will this stop? For us here in Kentucky, it was Breonna Taylor's door being busted in. It was David McAtee, the barbecue man. Hashtag after hashtag of our loved ones being lost. And it really does speak to the fact that we are not being treated as human beings, and we're criminalizing folks because of the color of their skin or how much or how little money they have in their pocket, and we're excusing it away instead of doing something about it. And now is the time for us to say enough. That's why I've stood up in my own right to say that I come from that struggle. I've had a firearm pulled out on me for a rolling stop. And thankfully, I'm still here. But a lot of our loved ones aren't. And it won't change unless we determine that structural racism is at the heart of it, and that we want this inequity to go away, and that we lead for it. And so I want to commend Attorney Mosby for speaking into that and understanding that we are criminalizing poor communities, and that is hurting our future. And I want to lift up the work that we're doing here in Kentucky to say that no-knock warrants should not be in place, that we need to address qualified immunity. That needs to go. We need to uplift the humanity of people. And that includes in every office, which certainly includes the United States Senate, which I'm excited to talk to you about.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to come to that very shortly. Cedric Alexander, I want to, the sort of idea, and it does feel in some ways as if internally, the police are sort of told it's you against them. It's you against the public. The public are the enemy. Every single person you run across is a threat, especially as we just heard from Charles Booker, if that person is Black. Just assume that they're threatening. Police officer, it is a dangerous job in some senses, but there were 48 firearm-related fatalities in 2020, according to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, each of them tragic to their families. But there were 264 fatalities in 2020 from COVID, and the leading cause was COVID. COVID is actually, much more dangerous because officers are confronting people and getting close to them in a lot of cases. 145 officers died from COVID, right? right? And versus 48 from firearms-related facilities. Meanwhile, 1,021 people were shot and killed by on-duty police officers in 2020. Almost none of them will go to prison. Vox had a headline saying police officers are prosecuted for murder in less than 2% of fatal shootings. 2%. It almost never happens. And so what is happening within the communication between police, the unions, et cetera, and police? Are police being essentially almost sort of ramped up against the public as if the public are just a threat by default?
Well, there's a historical context we can go back to from the inception of policing in this country. I don't have to reiterate that. Everybody know what that is. We know how policing stood up in this country and what it has traditionally been. And even in the changes and the differences we've tried to make over the years, we're still somewhat in the same place. Any death is tragic. I've had to bury police officers being a chief. I've had to talk to families of police officers who were involved in the shooting and killed a family member. It is tough. Either way it goes, it's horrible. We don't want to lose any lives. But to your question very specifically, policing is broken in this country, and we got to find a way to fix it. Because every time we have an incident like this to occur, it's not based on what the police think happens. As you heard, that chief tried to rationalize what happened in that shooting. Well, it was accidental. Maybe it was, but that's not a conclusion for him to draw this early in an investigation. You need to leave that up to the investigator because it sounds defensive and it's not working for policing. But at the same time, it becomes very apparent to me, someone who knows the profession, who understand the difficulties that job men and women have to do to go out and serve and protect, because there are thousands of good police officers. But those who are out here offending the badge, who feel they're above the law, who cannot and do not want to connect with communities of color, regardless of where they are, they don't have a place in this profession. And people like ourselves, even myself, we got to speak out against it because it's the good officers who want better. And it puts them in a very precarious situation that they don't want to be in. And I'm here to protect the good officers, not those who take it upon themselves to treat people like trash. Not acceptable.
And Attorney Mosby, it is, as I said, there's this conflict, right, between what a lot of people want, because look, there are a lot of people who want the movements of Black bodies to be constantly policed and monitored. They want enforcement of lower level drug crimes, even though a lot of Silicon Valley boys are selling weed now. It's popular for them to do it, but if they know that there's weed being sold in Baltimore, they want those people prosecuted, right? So when you went out and said, I'm not going to do that anymore, what was the reaction? Because I know there are some people who are concerned that this will just unleash more crime. If you don't go out and over-police these minor crimes, there'll just be an explosion of crime.
So one of the things that I recognize is, as a prosecutor, my ability to shape the criminal justice system. Recognizing, as I stated, that these low-level offenses for Black people in this country can lead to a death sentence. So what I came out and did, it was as a result of the COVID policies, global pandemic. I consulted with public health experts, and we moved to depopulate the jails and the prisons, and we had an experiment. So for over a year, we basically came out and said, we're not going to prosecute these low-level offenses. Drug possession, prostitution, trespassing, urinating, defecating in public, open container, all of these low-level offenses that have nothing to do with public safety. And what we found out through the data, we eliminated 1,400 warrants. We dismissed 1,400 cases. And based upon that data, I'm happy to say that what we were able to do was to showcase the drug arrests went down by 80%. The number of individuals going in and out of the jails went down by 39%. The recidivism rate, only 5 of those 1,500 individuals actually recidivated. And our violent crime, unlike 63 of the 66 major municipalities in the country, our violent crime went down 20% and our property crime went down 39%.